Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Missing Frames. This is the podcast where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. I'm your host, Shawn Eastridge. We're hanging out on the Nerd Party Network, a collection of podcasts dedicated to bringing you all things entertainment. Check us out at thenerdparty.com and make sure you're following us at Join Nerd Party on Twitter and at the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. So today, my guest is none other than a dear friend of mine who has never ever been on the show, but has forever and ever been a part of my life, or I feel like it's been forever. And that gentleman is Shea Weekley. Shea, welcome to Missing Frames. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Shawn, for having me.
Thank you so much for this. Is you. This is all you. You suggested this.
I did.
Are making this happen.
I did. I've been a fan. I've been a fan of you since college, and I've been a fan of this show since you started doing it. I listened to quite a few episodes and reached out and was like, I wanted to know if there was a particular movie that you had seen, and you said that you had, and I thought, well, this is a great publicity grab for me, so let me go ahead and see what I can do.
This is a great way to promote myself, exactly. So, and as long as I've known you, that's been the way you've done things. And
that's how I operate.
You've been nothing if not persistent and consistent. I think consistent was the right word, not persistent. You've been persistent in your consistence.
Yeah, consistently persistent, persistently consistent. All this time.
Now tell the good people at home the film you have chosen for us.
So I have chosen Michael Mann's 1981 film Thief, which, as far as I can tell, is about a Neolithic taxidermist. Just judging by the title of the film.
And neither of us have seen this.
Neither of us have seen it. No, I'm a big Michael Mann fan, and it popped up somewhere in my feed along the way, and I thought I should see this. And then Shawn is usually my go-to for people who've seen everything, and I asked you if you had seen it, and I was honestly shocked. I was honestly genuinely surprised that you hadn't seen this film. So I'm really honestly thrilled for us to be able to see it around the same time and then talk about it.
Yeah, you and me both. I feel like it's been a long time since we've watched a movie quote unquote together and just discussed what we saw. So this is going to be very exciting for us. For those of you at home, Shea and I have known each other, for
since
14 years now.
Yeah, since at least 2010.
Wow. So it's been a long time. We went to film school together, and it's been a gay old time is how I describe it.
I couldn't disagree with you more.
But one of the things that was great is we lived together for a little while. We were roommates, and we would watch movies, and we'd talk about them, and we'd review them, and we were always going out and seeing movies together. But this is something, because we are no longer roommates, sadly, that we haven't been able to do for many a year. I feel like the last movie I saw with you was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 in 2011.
It was. That was exactly what I was literally about to say. You were actually the person who brought me into the Harry Potter franchise, both in the books and the movies. Growing up in the house that I did in the 90s, they were pretty verboten. So it wasn't until I got to college that I was able to explore that at all. And you were like, you lent me all the books. You had all the movies up till 5. And then we saw 6, 7, and 8 on opening nights for those 3 years of college. And
a joy, a treat.
It is. I love that series, and it's all thanks to you. So yeah, that was probably that is unfortunate that's the last film we saw together, but
it really is. And introductions and introducing you to Harry Potter, you were actually, you didn't introduce me to Michael Mann, but you did introduce me to Heat. I just did a Heat episode with my wife, Sarah. I guess that was a few episodes ago. It was a while ago. I don't remember what the number was, but we just rewatched Heat. But you were the one who sat me down and made me watch Heat in the first place. By that point, I think I'd seen Collateral, and I don't think I'd seen any other Michael Mann films. And you were the one. I think I told this story on that episode, but you sat me down, and I was like, oh, that was who cares? Like
Yeah,
it was boring.
made you was the optimal word there. I was so excited to show you
I
this
wanted to see it, but
masterpiece.
yeah.
I was thrilled. I was like, I can't. Shawn is going to absolutely love this.
And The Dark Knight had just come out, so it was just like, there was a lot of like, oh, Nolan was very inspired by Heat, so I was very into watching it, and then I just didn't
Yeah.
like it.
No, it was one of those. Is a classic where I keep looking over, and I'm pretty sure like you were like yawning. You were not. It was just you were bored. You were just bored, and I didn't have the words at the time to be like, you shouldn't be.
Who
I
are you?
couldn't
Why am
rectify
I
it.
talking to you? Why are we in the same room? That
Right.
was, I think, the day I moved out, or the next day you asked me to leave. I
I
think
did.
is what
Yeah.
happened.
Well,
It was
your stuff was on the lawn in the morning, so I think you pretty well got
yeah,
the
you didn't
idea.
you didn't technically ask me. You just put the stuff out
I
there, and I
threw
got the
you
gist
out.
of it. Yeah, but
Yeah, but
what's
it was surprising at the time. But everybody has those films, right? For me, it was Shawshank Redemption.
that's right.
Around that point in time, yeah. Somebody was like, "You should watch this," and I watched it. And I was like, "Meh," and they were like, "How can you say that?" And I was like, "It was meh." And then you take that, then you watch it like 2 years later, and you're like, "Oh, I was an idiot."
Yeah, that's
That's a really
exactly
good
what
movie.
it wasn't 2 years. It was over a decade later, and that was my exact reaction. Was like, oh my god, I was an idiot. And one of the first things I did after Sarah and I finished watching, I think it was either right before we recorded or maybe right after. I texted you and I apologized, and I was like, I cannot believe like how deflated you must have felt, because the film is spectacular. It is
Yeah,
a masterpiece,
it
and
is.
I was watching it with my wife and realizing like, oh my god, how could I have done that to Shea? It really it hurt me, and
Well, it doesn't matter where anybody is in their walk as long as they accept the gospel at some point, and you
that's
came
right,
around.
exactly.
So now you have
So
heat in your heart.
yes, Heat is in my
And
heart. Michael
right.
Mann is somebody who is jumped way up on my list. Not that he was ever low on my list. It's just that I haven't seen a whole lot of Michael Mann movies. I've seen Heat, Collateral, and Last of the Mohicans, which is also one I should watch again, because that was another
Mhm.
one I didn't particularly love, but is
Mhm.
so beloved and so highly esteemed that I have a feeling in that relationship it was definitely me. Um, what else?
Possibly his stuff goes all over the place for me because it's you think Mann is one of those directors for me when you think you have him pegged, he zigs and a zag. Like to me, Heat has a lot in common with the other film. Honestly, I love Collateral probably even more than I love Heat, even though I understand that uh, critically Heat is like the film for him. But to
Yeah.
me, Collateral was the first film I saw, and it always stands out to me. But then there's Ali and Public Enemies.
Oh, Ali, I saw Ali, but I saw it years ago. Like
Uh
I
huh.
saw it in theaters. So I was 14, 15, and I don't remember much of it except that Will Smith
Right.
was great.
He absolutely was. But some of those don't really kind of stick in his style. Whereas then his lesser known film that I think is actually really a gem that I wish more people would see is The Insider with Al Pacino and Russell
Mm.
Crowe. That's that's a really solid one that I don't think a lot of people have seen. And then of course Miami Vice with like Jamie Foxx and Colin Farrell from 2006, which I think a lot of people also forget was Michael Mann because it was just kind of out there. It's a thing. I don't
Did
know.
you know that Michael Mann actually, I don't know if he was the showrunner or the guy who created the show, but he was actually involved with the TV show. I did not know
Oh,
that.
no, I didn't
Yeah.
know that at all.
Yeah, he because it's weird. It's like Miami Vice. Okay, I guess Michael Mann, but he was either like their go-to director or he had some involvement where I think he might have created it. Now I want to know for sure, but I remember looking it up and being like, "Wait a second, I had no idea." Um, yeah, it
No, I
was
didn't know that at all.
created by Anthony Yurkovich and produced by Michael Mann for NBC. So he, it is
Oh,
a
okay.
really weird connect the dots moment. It's because I had the same reaction. I think many people who didn't know had, which is like, oh, I guess Michael Mann is making those. It was in a period of time where that was happening a lot. Those like old TV shows were being updated and brought to
That's true.
theaters. So it just felt like another one of those, and it felt weird that Michael Mann would want to be involved. It makes a lot more sense when you realize he had already been involved. So there you go.
Yeah, it does. That does make more sense. That was kind of his span there, that 2006, 2009, where it was like, coming off of Collateral, I was just thrilled to, go see Miami Vice, and that was kind of a letdown, and then Public Enemies as well.
Yeah. And
A
I
bit
didn't
of a
even
letdown
see
for
that.
me.
Yeah. So Collateral, Ali, Heat, and Last of the Mohicans. And Thief, for a lot of people, like you said, this is kind of his first, I think it's his first film, or at least, yeah, it's his feature film debut. He
Yep.
wrote it and directed it, and James Caan is in it. James Caan?
Can?
Caan? There are two A's, and it throws me off. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's an excuse.
I always did the con. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I was always a con man.
As a Star Trek fan, I tend to lean towards
Caan,
in general.
right.
So let's just say James Caan.
Sure.
And someone out there can yell at us if we're wrong. But
Mhm.
yeah, Thief is one that, like you, I see it constantly. As a devoted Criterion Collection fan,
Right.
I think they post about this almost daily, because I feel like I see that, like, the iconic photos of
Yes.
James Caan just like posing and looking
Yeah.
badass.
Thief and Marnie, they constantly
Yeah,
post.
yeah. And a friend of mine who I used to work with, Daniel, he's a big Michael Mann fan, and he has been trying to get me to watch Thief for a little while as well. So I really do not know much else about it other than that, and the fact that I am excited by it, because I do feel like I'm in this revival of, like, oh yeah, Michael Mann, like, Heat's amazing. I was so dead wrong about that, and I need to watch more from him. And
And,
that's
yeah, and this seems to be the thing that started it all. It's the thing. I haven't seen also some of his other earlier stuff that came out, like Manhunter or
Yeah.
The Keep.
yeah.
Which
And
were his-
Manhunter was the first Hannibal Lecter movie.
yes, with
Brian Cox, right?
Cox. That's
Yes,
right.
he is
Yep.
Hannibal Lecter.
That's right. Yeah,
Even
and
though
so
it's technically, that's not to say it is related to, like, Silence of the Lambs was basically like it's its own thing. So Manhunter is an adaptation of Red Dragon, which was then adapted by Brett Ratner, who everybody loves. But yeah, Manhunter I'm curious about too, but that's neither here nor there.
yeah, same. But all that to say is Thief really kicked off one of the most prestigious modern careers in directing. Michael Mann has a sterling reputation in the industry. Even recently, I enjoyed his series. I know he only directed one episode, but Tokyo Vice was quite good as well. And I've been a fan of the way that he directs style and tone, and his willingness to embrace new technology as one of the first adopters of digital cinema. Was very refreshing, even though he was leaning against so many people working in digital cinema to get it to look just like film. And he was one of the few directors to say, no, let's just embrace it for what it is, and lean into the digital side with early Thomson Viper systems on Collateral and Public Enemies, where it looks like it was shot on like a 3CCD like Sony camera from 1985. but it's its own look. It leans into that sort of vibe, and he's kind of carried that through, and it gives you this spectacular sort of neo-noir sort of gritty nighttime realism that he can do that really other people, it's just not the it doesn't transfer the same. Even in films of his that I didn't particularly enjoy, like Miami Vice, there's nobody who captures that sort of just that nighttime drive mentality like Michael Mann.
That's a great way to describe it. He really gets in the head of somebody who is driving a car in the middle of the night, just like dead exhausted. Like I think that's what struck me rewatching. He is just how brilliant he was at conveying the inner turmoil of his characters, who, Al Pacino has his big Al Pacino moments in that movie, but De Niro is pretty low key in Heat. And yet part of it is his performance, obviously, but like, Mann's sensibility is the inner workings of these very complex human beings, like, in the world of crime, and just like conveying those moods and that sort of darkness and that murk through everything. Like, every element is unified in a way that expresses this real complex vision. And sometimes you see this in filmmakers, like their first films, like you can say like, oh yeah, THX 1138, I can see how the guy who made that, some
Right.
of those ideas went into Star Wars, kind of.
Which
Sometimes,
you don't
and
say about American Graffiti. You're
you
like,
don't
wait,
say
this
that, yeah,
guy made Star Wars?
yeah, I guess the hot rod idea, like, Star Wars
Sure.
is very much about, like, space at that time was like slow and 2001 and it looks fake. So George Lucas brought the speed to sci-fi,
Sure.
I guess. So you could say that. There aren't a lot of, I'm blanking. I guess David Lynch is another great example of a filmmaker who right out of the gate came in with a confident, specific vision that was just perfect from the get-go. I'm very
Mhm.
curious to see Mann's debut and how much he was in tune with that sensibility, or was it something he discovered throughout? Like, was it an Eraserhead right from the get-go where you'll feel it watching Thief, or will it feel a little less refined? Will it feel a little grungier, like Scorsese's Mean Streets, like something like
Sure.
that? That's what I'm most excited, I mean, amongst other things, just to watch it I'm excited for, but I am curious to see how much of his vision is here and what seeds of his vision are like obvious from this debut.
Absolutely. And in the stills, even for it, neither of us have seen it. We've both not really looked into it, seen very little of it. But even in the stills, it's got that steely blue
Yeah,
nighttime sort of vibe. And it's got the lone central figure of Khan. And even even the name Thief, it implying that James Caan, we don't know, but inferring that James Caan is some sort of high profile thief of some sort. Uh, you can see the evolution, at least just even in the filmography, from that up through Manhunter into somehow Last of the Mohicans. I don't know. There's every once in a while there's like a strange historical left turn. He's heading
yeah,
on like this like noir path, and all of a sudden it's like I'm gonna do Last of the Mohicans, and he's like the insider. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna do a Muhammad Ali film, and then he
right.
goes Collateral, Miami Vice, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna do another one. He does Public Enemies.
And
He goes
then
for
he's
another
like, you
historical
know what?
film
I'm not gonna do another one for a
for a
little
long
while. I
time.
think I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
take a break.
yeah, I'm very curious about that. I'm very excited to see that. And again, people are fans of this film. It's a classic. It's apparently a great James Caan performance. I've really only seen him in, I guess, The Godfather and Elf.
I
So
was gonna say,
I
don't
know he
shortchange him
has
now.
range. I know
Yeah,
there's range there. Just
you,
curious to
I've seen him in sad to admit, I've seen him in a fair amount of the TNT original series. Was it called Las Vegas? That he
that
was
I
a,
don't
a
know.
regular on with Josh Duhamel for a number of years. It was like when I worked in high school at a hotel. That was one of the few things that was always on in the lobby. And one of my jobs was I had to constantly clean the lobby. So
So
I would catch like 2 or 3 episodes in a row of James Caan in the syndicated show,
well, you're
Las
the James
Vegas.
Caan expert now.
Yeah.
You've watched more hours of James Caan in
Yeah.
something than I think I have.
Right. Me and everybody else in the nursing home.
So let's try to guess what the plot of Thief is. I really don't know anything other than what I've seen in the posters, the cover of the film, and the
Sure.
fact that
Same.
Michael Mann is directing it. So we've got James Caan. He's a con man.
It's already too late that I've laughed at it. I should have just let there be complete silence as that rolled across.
I'll
But
just cut out your laughter and let
yeah,
that
please
moment just fall as flat as it should have.
put in some cricket chirps there. No, yeah.
I think, you know what I think? I think this is going to be maybe the proto De Niro character in
Sure.
Heat.
Yeah.
I think it'll be the thief who's very good at what he does, but is like on the cusp of wanting to get out. Like he doesn't want to do this anymore. Just the imagery of him being alone and lonesome in these starkly lit alleyways. Like I feel like it'll be that kind of thing. The guy who wants to get out, but they keep pulling him back in.
I can see that, and he is a little Sorkin-y in that way, right? He writes a lot of characters who are really, really, really good at what they do in very
Right.
specific ways. Sorkin's talked about how he loves. You see it a lot in his earlier works as well, but loving to see people who are and fascinated by people who are just excellent at their jobs. And I think he does a lot of that as well. And so my take is that Caan is a thief, a high profile thief who's hired to do a job. And I have not seen anything, so this is completely way off. Hired to do a job, and he steals something, and then he gets involved in something that's way over his head. He's pulled into the middle of something between two people. He realizes what he has and that he can't turn it over. And then he's caught between the people that he stole from and the people that he owes the thing to. And there's a woman.
I was gonna say, there's got to be a woman in there somewhere, and the woman, it's either he meets her right as this heist or whatever it is, this job is kicking off, and the things are happening in parallel, where it's like, oh, the life of normalcy, domesticated life. Like I can maybe this is the life I want. Again, I don't know why, I just feel like there's a De Niro vibe in here of
there has to be
him,
one last job.
And it's not just Heat, obviously. Like that's a classic, like the guy who is ready to get out of that world, but then the tragedy is he can't. He is that world. He is that criminal, and it's the tragedy is he ends up getting shot or whatever at the end. But I think there will be a woman in here. I wonder how involved she is. Like, is she a daughter of the family he has to rob? Will we get that melodramatic? Like, is she a part of a crime family? He's getting involved. It's like a Romeo Juliet situation where he's getting involved with the wrong woman, the woman who's like, you can't get involved with her because she's so-and-so's sister or wife or something or other. Like, I feel like that's going to be...
It could be that, or it's the woman who says, we have a good thing together, but I'm not going to be with you while this is going on.
Yes.
You got to give it up. And he's like, babe, just one more job. And then
one more job. Exactly. Yep. And then that one more job is the one that ends everything.
And he can't, because he's you know what he is?
What is he?
He's a thief.
Oh my God.
He's a thief.
He's a thief.
Yeah, and a con man.
He's a con man and a thief. Yeah. My favorite.
Or a cane man,
favorite.
whichever.
Clearly Michael Mann's favorite too.
Yeah, Michael Mann.
Michael Mann and James Caan, and in the film Thief, which
from 1981,
which I am very excited now to watch. I say, let's go do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We'll be back, and stay tuned.
Now available to own on video cassette.
And we're back. Shea, how do you feel about Michael Mann's Thief?
I feel exhilarated.
I just feel.
I feel exhilarated. And honestly, I feel we did a really, really good job ahead of time guessing what was going to happen in this movie.
We definitely did. I will say I was pleasantly surprised at the things that didn't fall according to our plot predictions. I did not expect him to already kind of be at the breaking point of his relationship, the romantic relationship. I think you and I both thought it was going to be very similar to Heat in that it's like, oh, he meets her and we go through the entire course of this new relationship. But it was kind of like they'd been seeing each other already, and the movie really starts like it kind of kicks off with an argument, like a intense argument between them, and then he decides, like, he makes the decision to let her into his life. He lets her in on the fact that he is indeed a thief. So I was like, oh well, that's a nice twist that we didn't necessarily start with, like, oh, we have to watch him invite her out and they go to dinner and they get to know each other and they court one another. That's the G-rated way of saying it. But I did appreciate that, and and again, we both predicted it was going to be the thief with a heart of gold who just wants to get out of the business.
He did. He wanted out. I mean, but his character is a brass tacks character, right? That guy gets down to brass tacks. There's no small talk with this guy.
Yeah.
He wants to know, what's the deal? What's going on? Let's just cut it out.
He's a professional. He is a professional. But
I'm curious. You said heart of gold. Now, I wouldn't describe this character. I don't think he's a good person at all.
No, maybe I exaggerated a little bit.
Yeah, you can see how he's traumatized. He was raised in a state home. You learn that through the film, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that.
Mm.
I'm seeing that by the way that you're treating everybody around you. He's a racist.
Yes, yeah.
He's a violent criminal racist. Is the main character of this film, and boy, is he compelling to watch.
Yes.
I mean, that's really James Caan is every bit as magnetic as sort of people had mentioned him being in this film, and you can certainly see. I mean, he is kind of the glue for a lot of these scenes. He's just got this sort of like raw power that sort of emanates from every frame that he's on screen, really.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think he really is, like, in terms of the strongest elements of the film, it's him. It's the cinematography, the direction, like everything technically is I don't remember if we talked about, I can't remember if we talked about it in part one, like the filmmakers who have great debuts right out of the gate. I don't know if we recorded that or if that was just us chatting.
Might have been just chatting
off the record, but this is such a confident debut, and he directed TV movies and I'm sure you know, television here and there, but this, as far as the mood of a Michael Mann film, as far as what you expect from a Michael Mann film, it's all there and it's all powerful. But you know, James Caan, his performance certainly is the most compelling story aspect, as it should be. I mean, he's the main character,
sure,
but everything around him feels a little stock in terms of like everything else just isn't quite as compelling as he is. He is by far the triple A quality in this movie, and everybody else is kind of there to sort of admire his brilliance.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, you're not wrong. Like Belushi, for those who don't know, Jim Belushi has a co-starring role in this, which I did not know or realize until I saw.
This was his first movie.
Oh, I didn't know that either. I mean, and he does a good job. He does a very admirable job playing basically a henchman or a sidekick, an associate who's
the buddy. He's like the lovable sidekick,
right? Agreeable, reliable, and expendable.
Yes. And I love I when I was watching the film and taking notes, the shot of they've pulled off their amazing heist and they're celebrating at the beach, and it just pans up. It's James Caan walking out of the water, and I'm like, oh yeah, baby. And we see shirtless James Caan, and I am into it. And then the very next shot is shirtless Jim Belushi getting out of the way. I immediately cold bucket of water. No offense, Mr. Belushi, but compared to James Caan, it was just it that hit me hard. But
it was, and then a follow-up shot of him tackling a woman into the surf. So
which is like just about the most romantic thing you can do, really.
Right, as a happy moment. Then an NFL linebacker just body slams a woman into the sand.
I mean, I don't know how the budget for the film was relatively small, but a lot of these people are doing their own stunts. I mean, Jim Belushi, when he gets shot later, he definitely takes that spill because it happens in slow motion, and you can see him. And I imagine he was probably bragging about it to that woman later on. I imagine they shot that scene afterwards, and he was like, I did my own stunt, and she was like, I can do it. And so he full on tackled her, and she completely wipes out.
Right. They didn't show her getting up, is all I'm going to say.
I was going to say, somebody should check on her. What is this? It's been 30 years, 40 years? 40 years later.
Yeah.
Someone should check
How
on
is that woman?
Is she okay? Is she still just washing up on the shore?
She's drinking through a straw right now, bro. That was it.
That's really all. This tangent has completely wiped my brain of anything else about this movie. But
we were saying so the ensemble. Well, so I'm curious. Yes. So you thought that? So I largely agree with you. I don't know why, but for some reason I wrote down here in my notes and I need to look up the actor's name just real quick. Oh, Robert Prosky, who plays Leo, the main bad guy. I found him to be. To me, those were the two best performances.
Well, let me clarify. Yeah, let me clarify. I think everyone is really good in the movie. I actually think maybe the weakest element is Tuesday Weld as the love interest. I thought she was a little wonky, But overall, like, everyone is really solid. Like even Willie Nelson, who's in this movie.
He is.
For
Yes,
some
for
reason.
those who, if any country music fans out there,
Yes.
Willie Nelson is in this movie, and it's no small role, to be completely honest with you. He is given
No.
a significant scene, and there's stuff going on there. It's not just like he's shoehorned in. He's a thing. He's a character. He's a person.
He's the mentor. He's Frank's mentor. There's love between them. There are moments where Willie Nelson is eyeing James Caan the same way I was when he walked out of that beach water, the ocean, shirtless. Yeah. There was a moment where I was like, Willie Nelson was the direction you are
in love.
Yes,
right.
You're in love. But it's a loving it's a familial relationship, a father-son type relationship. But it's like, it is, I want to clarify that I think everyone is really good in this movie. I think in general, the movie does a really great job of kind of not completely upending expectations, but it's things with a twist. Like we were saying, like, it's not exactly Robert De Niro in Heat. It's a little bit different. It's we get to see, Robert De Niro in Heat is basically like, by the end of that movie, well, I don't, not to spoil Heat, but what happens if you've seen Heat at the end of that movie.
Right.
But Robert De Niro is, in some ways, he wants to live a domesticated life the same way Frank does in Thief. But in Thief, the interesting angle is that we actually see that happening. Like the middle of the film, I wasn't expecting it to turn into like, oh, he got married to her and they're adopting a kid and all that stuff. Like I thought that was a really interesting twist, because usually that would come kind of at the end of the movie or not at all. We would see the development of the relationship. He'd be like, I'm going to give it all up for love. And then something tragic happens and he gets dragged back into the world. But that's not quite what happens here. But by the end of the film, I'd say the last 30 minutes of the film, which are, arguably the most exciting, are also kind of the most straightforward in a way. So everyone kind of then turns back into the most stock version of their characters. And it's not, I guess I am kind of knocking the movie, but I don't mean it as like a criticism that's like, this just ruins everything. But it was something that I felt a kind of like, oh, well, I guess at the end it's the bad guy. Like the guy who took him under his wing just turns out to be really evil. And he's like, I'm going to kill your wife. I'm going to kill your son. I own your son. I adopted him for you. Like, it was just a lot of like, oh boy. And they killed Jim Belushi. And I was like, you didn't have to go and do that. Like, I know like the shirtless scene was a little much, but you didn't have to kill him. But
I know you're a criminal underlord, but still.
The last 30 minutes were almost like in mini form, the movie. It was almost like its own inciting incident, its own twist, its own climax, and it felt a little bit more play by play. Like, all right, James Caan's got to go and kill everybody. Though it felt a little stock, and it's not like I wanted the movie to end that way, but in some ways I was kind of like, oh, all right, I guess that's it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so from a story perspective, I agree. I think the first act had the most sort of refreshing material in it. And then, I mean, really was kind of on sliding rails through the second and third act, where you can kind of see where it's going. And the interesting magnetic parts of it really are Caan, his character, and then Mann and his already, what I would call, extremely confident command of the camera.
Yes.
Confident command of what he wanted the soundscapes to be, confident command of what he wanted the pacing and the editing of the film to be. You can already see, again, talking about confident debuts, this has to be, it's not top of the top, but it's up there, and it's extremely strong debut.
It feels there's no question this is a Michael Mann film. It's like, oh wow. So right from the get-go, as you said, he had such command over what his vision is.
His sound, I made a note. I wanted to talk with you about, so Tangerine Dream, right, yes, provided the soundtrack for this film. But the way he uses sound overall as well, for instance, the scene where he's towards the end where they're welding their way through.
Yeah.
And it's just a cacophony, an unrelenting cacophony of just, I don't want to say welding sounds, but the torch, the acetylene torch just hewing its way through this steel door. And you can't make it. He realized he couldn't make it brief, and he had to make it just overwhelming. And it was, but it gets the point through. And he's always used audio to such excellent effect in all of his films, and you can see that starting here. The music is overcranked, the sound effects are overcranked, but not just wantonly. It's very purposeful. I still can niggle a little bit sometimes with the way that he mixes his dialogue. Some of it I think
I
is
was
low
gonna say
budgetness, but
did it feel a little bit like the dialogue was on the lower side?
yeah, I felt like I was watching a Nolan film, to be
I was
honest, for
gonna
a little
say
bit of it.
Nolan
But
takes everything from Mann. He owes Mann everything all the way down to the
yeah,
sound mix.
what he didn't realize is Mann didn't have any money
Yeah,
probably on that film. It's
that's
like
the
you're
problem.
taking you've got the wrong takeaway, my friend.
That's
But
exactly it. But
but
you're absolutely right. And to the antithesis of that, the scene where Khan is breaking into the guy's home and it's
mhm.
just completely quiet as he's sneaking around. He's searching for what's his name,
That's a
Leo,
great point. Yes,
going through the house, and it's all the sound is practically cut out.
it
And
is.
it ramps up the intensity, but it is just it goes to show that, man, that could have been a like Tangerine Dream coming in with the guitar solos. Like, it could have been like the badass, like, yeah, Frank is wrecking house, but it
Right.
really, like, he is in that moment. He wants us, the audience, to be in that moment and really feeling the intensity of it.
Mhm.
And it's phenomenal. And I mean, from the first shot, the
Yeah.
movie, when I think Michael Mann, we talked about it a little bit, is you think about that kind of that mood, that kind of the darkness and the neon and the fluorescence, and you think
Mhm.
about like everything that is on display in the first shot of this movie. It was really like an immediate thing. It's just, Frank gets into a car, they drive off, and it's just like this beautiful shot, rain-soaked streets, and just
Yeah.
beautiful, like, lights and colors. And it feels immediately, again, like you just know you're watching a Michael Mann movie.
You do. Just heavy, right? Heavy, distorted synth just rattling your skull from the first frame. And like, I watched this movie and I was like, oh, okay, I see where Drive came from
Oh,
2010. Nicholas
absolutely,
Winding Refn. I was like,
100%.
this had to be one of the biggest reference films for Refn when he made Drive. Like, I mean, the tone, the music, the editing style, like the choice of like, I was like, this is this is I mean, if I didn't know any better, you could have probably intercut some of those shots into Drive, and I would have been none the wiser.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way. Down to, like, the protagonist who, obviously Frank is a little more talkative than Ryan Gosling's character, but
Mm-hmm.
like that same sort of stoic professional, like, doesn't typically let his emotions get the better of him. Like, he has some freakouts. He freaks out in the car when he's arguing with the girlfriend. He
Right.
freaks out when they're trying to adopt the baby and the woman is just giving them crap. So he has these little outbursts, but in general, he's pretty collected. I think one of the most incredible moments, apparently this was improvised, this was not supposed to happen, and the doctor's reaction is
Oh yeah.
real, but it's when he's like, do you need anything? Or he's like, I'm so sorry. And Khan just kind of stares at him and doesn't respond. And they have this intense moment where they're sort of looking at each other. The I don't know if it was a real doctor or just an actor, but whoever it was, he did not like, he was genuinely terrified because that was not what was supposed to happen. Apparently that was not what was scripted. But
Oh, that
Khan
makes
felt like, he's like, I just felt like I had to sort of stare at him in that moment. So the look of fear on the doctor's face is sincere. Like, he doesn't know what's happening. And there is a
Oh my
feeling
God.
of, like, you almost feel like Frank is going to lose it
I
again.
thought he was. Yep. I
Yeah.
thought he was gonna break that guy in half.
Exactly. But
Was gonna happen.
so while it's more emotional, I think, like in Drive, the outbursts of violence are very quick and very sudden. And in
Mhm.
general, he's kind of stoic throughout. And it's a little different, but it does feel like a similar protagonist in a similar world, kind of trying to do a similar thing, like wanting a family, wanting to get out, wanting to protect this family, but ultimately having to murder some peeps.
Well, and it's similar in I think that's what I also want to speak with you about a little bit is Man and his protagonists with a code.
Mm.
Like from Heat, from Collateral. Again, I haven't seen Manhunter, admittedly. From his Dillinger film.
Well, even
I can't
man, I
remember.
mean, you can just assume Hannibal Lecter. Like Hannibal
Right.
Lecter is a character with a code. Like he
Mhm.
is horrible. He's a horrible person, and the code is twisted. But he has a way about him. He has an efficiency, a professionalism. All these characters that man examines and encounters and kind of delves the depths of their psyches. Like they all feel like like you said, they all have a code.
They do. And Khan, I think one of the more as those characters went along, I think outside of Lecter, let's just throw that one out. I was going to say they become more palatable
Right,
because
and man didn't like he didn't create Lecter, to be fair.
that's true. He didn't, and he this was also adapted from a book. Now, Mann
That's
did
true,
write the
yeah.
screenplay as well, and I think that a lot of this character was brought to life by Mann and obviously Khan together,
Yeah.
working in tandem. But going back to what we said, it's not even like Khan's character is lightly racist or like he is a full
Right.
blown like probably criminal domestic abusive racist,
Yes.
and somehow you still find yourself wanting to root for him in some ways, and in
Yeah.
many ways that's still one of the movie's more remarkable feats is like this guy in any other movie would be the antagonist.
Agreed, yeah, and I think part of it is because we're spending so much time with him and we've seen him in enough situations. We know he has a rough background, that he wants something better for his life, and his aims in life are to have a family and to
Mhm.
get out of this business, and these are noble goals, even if he is not a noble person, but his intentions are pure. And it's almost like you're like, okay, I understand you, Frank, and I want you to gain that life, and you're almost willing to be like, all right, let's maybe let's leave the adoption office, let's get out of there. Like you just
Right.
kind of,
Yep.
not like you don't forgive him, but you're willing to kind of give him a pass because you understand the frustration and the anger, and his frustration in that moment comes from the fact where it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm not doing anything wrong by wanting to take care of a kid, am I? But like his
Yeah.
reaction is completely overblown.
It's true. He's doing the best with the tools that he has on hand in that moment, um, emotionally speaking. Because you're right. His moments of outburst are almost always isolated to his personal life. Like he's faced with far greater obstacles in his professional career, so to speak. But he's calm, collected, knowledgeable. He's the professional, right? That stuff
Yeah.
doesn't phase him at all, ever. But yeah, in his personal life, my guy's just a wreck.
In
But
terms of
he is noble at the end in the sense that he sends her and his son away to with money. He just sort of it's like he settles with himself in the sense that it's like there's no coming back from this.
yeah,
He's like, I now realize it.
I think he goes into it thinking there's a good, and obviously we want the audience to think this too, so there's some level of suspense, but he goes into it kind of like, this is the end for
Mhm.
me.
Which I thought he might pass. But you made a really excellent point earlier in saying that the end of the film could have been the inciting incident for another film, and you're absolutely right because he walks away. Right, he walks
Yeah.
away with his life, but not much more. He's
Yeah,
lost
yeah.
literally everything else, mostly some at his own hand, but understandably knowing that there was no way he could have preserved that given what he was going to go and do. But he does walk away with his life.
Yeah, and I think one of the big issues I have with the movie, and it's tough because I feel mixed about this. I don't want him to die. I like the character, and that's the point
Mhm.
of the movie. You don't want him to die. But there was something, it felt a little too easy. There's a really great threat set up with Jim Belushi. Yeah, they kill Jim Belushi, and then
Yeah.
they are like, here, dump him in acid. The big
Yeah.
head honcho is like, I own you, I own your family. It's like a legitimate threat, and you're like, oh my god, how's he gonna get out of this? And then he's like, I'll just get a gun and kill
Two
everybody.
people, basically.
Yeah, he goes, and it just feels a little too easy. He walks right in, he beats up the one guy, then shoots the other guy, and it's intense. Like, it's well shot, great suspenseful filmmaking, but it just feels a little too easy. He walks outside and these other guys are like, we're coming to get you, and he gets shot in the shoulder, but he has a bulletproof vest on, and I'm thinking, wait a second, why don't any of these professional bodyguards also have body armor on?
Yeah, and
This is ridiculous.
and when he was getting threatened, there were like 6 dudes standing over him. I'm like, where'd those guys go?
Yes.
Like,
so that's what I felt like it for him to walk away, for that to be the big finale. It's exciting and it's suspenseful, but when he gets away, it just felt a little like, that's it. Like that didn't feel so difficult considering the level of threat. And he goes and blows up everything, and he's efficient and he's cool and collected and he does the job, and that's his character. But I almost wanted that to be a bit more like his final stand. Like it felt a little too easy for him to get out of there and to be the only one intelligent enough to, like, he literally shoots everybody else in the chest, and they all like it's
he gets winged once,
right,
by a shotgun from like 15 yards away.
And it's not even like he's like, body armor. Like it just felt a little too like, I
thought
that was easy.
I thought the police were going to show back up again, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right at that moment, I thought they were going to try and conduct a raid on Leo's place at the same time that he was trying to like exact his revenge, you know? I was trying to like portend the future a touch, and that never really came back either. So I definitely think the screenplay sort of fell down a little bit right there.
Yeah.
In the third act. I definitely
we knew
would agree.
we had to get to that ending. It's an ending that does make sense, but I think for a film that was doing a really good job of kind of tweaking the formula, and it's sort of what you expect, but not quite, for it to kind of end up with a climax that's like, and then he just goes and shoots everybody without really much hassle, felt a little underwhelming for me.
It's true.
Not enough to ruin the movie, of course, but it just was like, it would have been, for a movie this dramatic and intense and relatively grounded, to go that route felt a little too like Schwarzenegger or Stallone in a big action movie.
That's true. No, that's a really good. No, I think it's a really good point. And it's almost, you could see Mann's realistic style creeping its way in, and then it just never fully pays itself off. Because like you pointed out already when we were talking about sound, the way that he's moving around the house, the way that he goes after people, it feels very grounded. And then it's just like, but wouldn't like, I get that this guy's supposed to kind of be like a white collar sort of crime lord, so to speak, right? Living in the suburbs. But at the same time, I mean, the only guy watching him was like an accountant with a rapist mustache.
Yes.
Like, that's it. Like there was just one dude in there who was, had his belt unbuckled and was getting a glass of milk.
Yes.
Like that was literally how it went down. Like
they literally are sitting across from each other, like just the two of them. And I know they are like part of, it's like their pride is their downfall. Like they're like, we own you, Frank. Even though they've seen what Frank is capable of, and Frank like storms into the guy's office, the assistant's office, and like proves himself, and that's what gets him on this guy's radar in the first place. And then for the movie to end, like you said, no bodyguards in this house. They just made a huge threat against this demonstrably dangerous person. And then like later that night, they're just like, whatever. We killed his best friend, but we're fine. We don't need any extra security. Where were those bodyguards? Like they just run, like they're like, oh crap. And they're running up to the house after the two people inside are already dead. I'm not trying to like pick this movie and be like, oh, plot holes, but it felt a little like, really, this big crime lord who has so much money and is so tough and had more henchmen with him when Frank was like beaten up and bloodied and couldn't see straight than he does when it's like, oh, there's a chance this guy might come and kill you. It just felt again, it felt too easy, and it's okay, but it undermines, I think, the effectiveness of that ending, and that you want there to be a sense of like emotional sacrifice, like a real sense of like he has to go out swinging, but it just felt a little bit like, oh, he goes out swinging, but he's really like, it's a one hit KO in round one of the fight, and that's it. He walks away unscathed. So
he does. So it was a bit of a squib right there at the ending, but it was even that was direct. It had such directorial panache that even as it was happening, I was like, I'm along for this ride. I just wish that there was maybe in the script something different was happening. But
having just rewatched Heat and the just frankly stunning gunfight and robbery, like the heist sequence, and the gunfight, like, just, there are a few action sequences that are that effective and fantastic in cinema.
Sure.
And so to watch this kind of like mini sort of like, all right, we got a few $1,000,000. What can we do with that? Like, that was fun to watch, just to see with the resources he had, how he would stage something like that with something a little bit more limited than with Heat, obviously a much more expansive setting, a much more expansive story, and more money. But it is cool to kind of see these little things on display, and even like the conversational stuff, like the scene when they're uh, at that diner and he's kind of
Mm-hmm.
pitching Jesse on like, here's what my life is, here's what I want out of life, here's what I want you to be for me, I want us to be together. it, I love I love that, and I love that you see that continue throughout his career. These kinds of like humanizing these criminals who could be very one note, but giving them layers. And I know James Caan said that's probably his monologue in that scene is the moment in his career he's the most proud of.
Deservedly so. I mean, and that's really saying something, because within that, even just within that movie alone, he had so many moments where he had to be doing so he was doing so much heavy lifting in this movie.
Yeah,
Because again, like you said, to be fair, I mean, his co-star there wasn't giving him a ton to work with. He's just
yeah,
really he's doing it himself. Like she's giving him enough, but I mean, the places he went there, I wasn't expecting. The places he went in his first jail cell conversation with Willie Nelson as well. I mean, that really
yeah.
set the tone for me. Additionally, and I think it's time to give Mann more credit for, I think, I was just glancing at his writing credits too. The fact that we talk about his strength directorially, but he's written most of the films that he's also directed.
Yeah.
His knack for putting together a taut scene through dialogue and character, not just with style. So many directors get dinged for just being concerned with the camera or being overly concerned with action sequences. This is a guy who can construct all of the action sequences in Heat and Collateral, Last of the Mohicans. He can do boxing from In Ali, and then he can also still put together a really tight, simple cross coverage dialogue scene in a diner, which he clearly loves to do because this film was filled with them. The amount of
Yeah,
times
yeah.
people sat down in booths across from each other to have a
I just love,
conversation.
but I also love like the city is so prominent in obviously in this and Heat and Collateral, like those films that are obsessed with these worlds
Hmm.
of crime where these people are moving through these very distinct settings, very identifiable settings, and he just loves the landscapes. But I love the way that he and cinematographer Donald Thorne, who really didn't do, I mean, he did a lot, but nothing quite on
Sure.
this caliber afterwards. But like, even the diner scene, you can see just the backdrop of the highway behind them, and the lights and the lighting and the blue. It just feels so striking and effective. But you're
Absolutely.
absolutely right. Like, Mann imbues one of his great strengths and his best works is just imbuing these almost like cliche quote unquote characters with real humanity, so that even with Heat, where it's like the cop with the robber across from each other at the table, it's not like a stock conversation, it's
Yeah.
a very human moment within this film that I think that's something Mann does throughout his career, is just kind of he tweaks he knows what your expectations are, and he just tweaks a little bit enough so that you feel satisfied and you can't quite call what's going to happen next, even though
And
you
that's,
kind of
yes.
can.
You kind of can, but in the moment, from a character, if you
Yeah,
if you aren't quite sure what a character is going to do from moment to moment, that's enough. Even people talk about story a lot, and I know you and I, Shawn, we've done some dabbling in writing, and I know even from that perspective, from the analytical perspective, a lot of weight these days gets put on story, as
yeah,
it should. I mean, there's stories get recycled all the time, but even from a character point of view, if you're this story is not revolutionary. However, because the
mhm,
character of Frank is so fascinating and you truly don't know how he's going to handle each moment to moment, or each
yeah,
passing situation, it makes it feel fresh and exciting and daring and like anything could happen, because you really don't know this guy. And he has that whole monologue about how in prison he learned just to not care. And I'm obviously abbreviating. James Caan did it much better than I did. But
no,
you know,
you were good. You were
that-
good too. You were almost on that level.
I could have given him a line reading. But you believe he's so convincing in that moment that you believe his character that the character's telling the truth about themselves. And so from moment to moment, if you put a person who truly doesn't care, as I think, if we're talking about the connection between Nolan and Mann and The Dark Knight and Heat, you've got a character in the Joker who truly doesn't care from moment to moment and is sort of chaotic. Caan sort of assumes a soft position there with that, where he had to, in order to survive in prison, adopt a position mentally where he let go of any care about what happened to himself, his bodily form, or the people around him, just so that he could stay sane. And then, so within the film, when I was watching it, the beats were playing out familiarly, but he, in the way that he was reacting to those beats, still felt fresh.
Yeah,
and I think it's for that reason.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and a lot of it I think has to do with Caan's performance, but it's interesting how methodically, like, he's very technical about the way he approaches not only his work, but even his love life. Like, he's like, this is what my plan is, this is where you fit into it, and she's like, I can't have kids. He's like, that's okay, we can adopt, like, I've planned it all out, this is the house we're gonna live in. Like, he's not cold, but he's methodical, and he's a man who needs a plan. That's his job. But also, like, he hasn't quite broken free of the constraints of being that person. And he approaches things in a way that is so methodical that sometimes it ends up hurting him. Like, I think when he sends his wife away and the baby away, and there's a level of ambiguousness there, because you do feel it's like, well, he walked away, he should be going after her, right? And we don't know. We don't know.
We don't.
But there is this sense of, like, it's like, well, this is what has to happen because you're not safe. I'm not safe. This is the life I live. So that's the end of this. And you need to leave now. And our life is over. And, part of it is like, is he putting on a show for her? Is he just trying to get her out? But then there's the other part is like, well, no, he's very calculated in the way he thinks. And he probably is like, it's a waste of time for me to talk to you. Get out of my house. Like, we're done.
He's got that sort of like, I say, get out of here now. Sort of, sort of
like,
scene, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is, it could have been really melodramatic and silly, and kind of on the page it is, but the way he plays it is very sincere and honest, and a great actor finds the truth within every situation, and that's what makes this so great and makes his performance so great.
It's true. His co-star did a good job there too, because I expected her to really go into the waterworks, or like you said, but she honestly, that was probably her best scene. She takes it in stride, remembering her whole backstory, where she understands the criminal life. She understands what the risks were up front, and so I believe her sort of reaction to him in that moment, where it's troubling, but not just
like, what'll I do without you?
Right.
Like, she kind
honestly,
of is like, all right.
If it was a Scorsese film, she probably would have just fell to pieces.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point.
If this was Scorsese, she would have been screaming and crying and, tears, like, and he would have been shaking her and like pulling her clothes and throwing it into a suitcase.
It's a really good point, because I think Mann kind of, it's not a major criticism, but I think, in films like this, or in Heat, like the female character, the romantic interest, I think some critics of his kind of knock the way he approaches the romances, and the female characters are very much in service of the male characters. But they do, like, maybe if they don't have their own agency, they don't feel, like you said, like they're not, oh, whatever, like, I can't live without you. Like, they feel independent. They feel like they are strong enough to go out on their own and survive, and not, while they're there in a storytelling function to serve the main character and to be the romantic interest of the main character. He does write them relatively well. Like, and the way they behave is not necessarily what you would expect in the woman in the crime movie, who all the tough guys, and she's just going to be that nagging, annoying, like, it's not really that. It's like, they're very, I guess,
they're
thoughtful and
self-possessed,
reasonable.
right?
Yeah. It's like, like you said, she doesn't sit around crying. She's kind of like, all right, I'll get the baby. I got to get out of here. And it's the same way in Heat. That woman kind of,
Yes.
I can't remember her name, but it
No,
is
me
that
neither.
same sort of, she feels like she has her own agency and is making her own decisions. And I don't know. I think that's something he kind of gets a bad rep for, but I've only seen a few of his films, and
It's true. No, I mean, I see what they're saying, and
it's not,
it's
the
a
argument
thing,
isn't
but
wrong. Like, I get it.
right. But it's not right. It's not like, yeah.
it's
If
not
the
wrong, but it's not
caricatures,
right.
right? The caricatures could be way worse. I'm not going to do any
Yes.
impressions, obviously, but yeah, it could really go off the rails, and he does give
we've
them
seen
more
Goodfellas.
agency.
We know.
Right. No, so to Tuesday Weld's credit, in that scene, she does a good job walking the line between someone who's genuinely heartbroken, but also understands
Yeah.
time is of the essence, and I'll have time to mourn this moment later.
Right.
I can't do that right now, and I can't understand it fully, but I understand enough to know that this is it. And I and the only reason he shouts at her, I think, in that scene is to sort of just shake her from just a little bit of a stupor.
Yeah, the shock of it, really, like, just
Yeah.
like, to process that, it's a lot of information to take in, and to like, oh, my life is over. Like, it's I have to start all over, and without the person I love, and what is going on. So it's a good, it's a decent performance that, when it really needs to hit the mark, does. So I will give her credit for that.
Yeah, but you're not wrong on the other counts. No, that one scene for her is what stood out to me. I thought she probably could have done a little bit more in the diner scene at the beginning. But I mean, Caan is such a force of nature there that, understandably, maybe she played it back. Maybe she purposely played it back even further.
Yeah, it's true.
So who knows? Because I mean, he was just so strong in that scene, and maybe she was just being a good scene partner. And I certainly, as a viewer, didn't mind. He was so magnetic, and as any listeners can tell, I mean, in my opinion, it's worth watching alone just for Caan's performance, regardless of the other elements, which I think some of which are also outstanding.
Yeah, and Caan himself, like, in addition to that monologue being his favorite, he has said, aside from The Godfather, this is his favorite performance that he's done. And I know there's an argument for Elf.
I know we were gonna cheese on it a little bit, but like I watch it every year, and it's like,
he's great. He's great in that movie.
He is great in that movie.
That's
he does
another.
Exactly what he's supposed
it's
to do.
funny. It's funny. I was, obviously I was joking, but that's another character that could have been very stock and very unlikable. And Caan is such an incredible actor in a movie that, like, no offense to Elf, but I don't know. I don't want to say it's beneath him. It's a sweet movie, but like he gives he's completely committed. It's not Al Pacino dancing to Dunkachino in whatever that Jack and Jill or whatever the hell that Adam Sandler movie is.
Yeah.
But it's not that, where you're like, oh my God, this is terrible, and you're just walking in for a paycheck. Like, Caan, he lends some emotional depth and nuance to that character. And Elf, he is just amazing. He's a fantastic.
Well, he is. No, absolutely. Right. He brings it harder than he really probably even needed to.
Yeah. We lost a great actor last year, and he brought it wherever he needed to bring it. Something else I want, we talked a bit about the effectiveness of setting, the way Michael Mann really does a great job creating the worlds that that his characters embody. But in addition to that, something else that I think this film was noted for at the time, and something is present in all of Mann's films, is the level of technical detail in terms of the robberies.
Yeah.
There's almost a level of like, oh, this is a how-to if you want to learn how to become a professional thief and be relatively successful. Here's some good information for you. And I know he consulted with thieves. The guy who played one of
he consulted with thieves.
Yes, they
what
were
a line.
Yes, he consulted with thieves, and they were. That sounds like a Bible verse, like and man consulted with thieves. But like, he consulted with like reformed thieves, and they were even in the movie. One of the police officers is played by one of the major consultants on the film. I think it was John Santucci. He was one of the sergeants.
Oh, okay.
So there's the attention to detail is incredible, and part of it speaks to the character of Frank. He's brilliant at his job, extremely efficient, but the actors legitimately, like, they're drilling into actual safes with actual drills. It's not staged. They learned how to do it. And it's just incredible, the attention to detail. Because again, it Mann does such a great job of this. The world is completely believable. And I think that's what, when the story kind of falters, it kind of feels a little more obvious. To your point, you're really invested in the film because we've done such a great job creating the believable world, that when we start to lean into the cliches and the obvious, it's like, wait a second. No. You're almost
Right.
less forgiving. But I just wanted to call that out because I thought that was so cool that they actually are legitimately using these
I
tools
did see. I didn't know that, but I mean, I completely and fully believe that. There was nothing there that would have made me think otherwise. You
And
know,
the shot of, like, when he drill the opening robbery, drills the hole, and then the camera goes into the hole so you can
Yep.
see the lock that needs to be broken. It's
Yeah.
and I love David Fincher, but I think David Fincher early in his career really had something to prove. Understandably, his first movie was Alien 3, so he had a lot of
Yeah.
to prove, or he felt he did. So there's a lot of, like, very, like, I'm thinking of Panic Room, like
That's exactly. Yep.
the
Totally.
moving through each room, and it's very fancy and stuff. It's like, there's a temptation to do those kinds of shots all the time, but Mann does not.
That
Even
was
this
it.
early on, he just, like, that's a cool shot, and there are plenty of cool shots in the movie, but not too many that call that kind of attention to themselves.
No, and it was extremely useful. I would say necessary to
Yes.
understand what it was. His next move was going to be, right, because then after that he sticks the whatever the pick in there and then hammers the mechanism out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have understood what he was doing had that shot not been there. And so it was probably an extremely necessary shot. So it had double marks, pulling double duty of each, just being rad and also being extremely useful in verbal language and helping the audience understand what is he doing and why. All those technical details. So no, I mean, Mann's never accused of being sloppy when it comes to attention to detail.
Yes.
And you can see that here. I mean, again, extremely strong debut from a revered director. He comes out, it looks like a Mann film, feels like a Mann film. And I think
it is a Mann film.
It's a Mann's film, Mann's film, a Caan film,
a Caan film, a Mann film.
Exactly. No, it's for anybody on the fence about it who's somehow managed to make it this far into this conversation.
Yeah,
it's definitely
spoil the entire film.
Yeah. And for those of you who've already watched it and just wanted to validate your feelings about it, hopefully you've agreed with that. Yeah, exactly. It's really good. It's absolutely, it was, and I'm thrilled to have seen it. I am such a big Michael Mann film. I even watched they always advertise these things like his new series on HBO, Tokyo Vice. I watched that, and it's, of course, he like executive produces and then directs the pilot. And it's like Michael Mann's new series, and it's like, yeah, okay. But it's like, Tokyo Vice was good, and his episode he directed was good. And again, he was doing crazy things with sound in that they don't do through the rest of the series because it's not standard. I think that's underrated. I think people don't talk about enough about what Michael Mann does with audio in his films.
I agree.
I think that his action sequences, I think that his tone, the night stuff, I think that gets a lot of attention. I think audio, I think more people should pay attention to that. I think we could probably learn more. And his evolution too from a camera style, a lot of this stuff is long lens, static, and then he's over time his cameras got smaller, lighter. The way he moves the camera is different now as well.
And
it's not a problem.
The use of artificial light that doesn't feel like it feels like legitimate street light. Like it feels like it's natural lighting, and it's not. But the way he and whatever DP he's working with shape the light and the look of those moments, it just feels like the rain-drenched streets of New York, LA, wherever it is. He just does such a great job of creating that feeling, that just kind of, it's not like grimy. it's not quite grimy. It's like,
Mhm.
it's beautiful. Like Blade Runner is beautiful. It's that kind of world, that kind of feeling in this kind of just sort like, I don't know. I just love the way it looks. And Thief, it's so clear that he understood what he wanted from the get-go, and that is really awesome because I feel like it's not easy to have that visually confident of a film right out
Oh,
the bat.
so true. No, that's really no, that's it. That's and I think you mentioned Fincher a minute ago. I mean, that also kind of strikes me in the same way. Like the ability to communicate and execute a vision that bold and that consistent from the get go. I mean, that alone would herald, a strong authorial voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just looking it up. Well, I guess that's not entirely fair. I mean, he works with a number of different DPs
Mm.
over time. A lot of French ones, or not French ones, excuse me, Italian Dante Spinotti for Heat and
Mhm.
Dion Beebe for like Collateral. And you mentioned a different. I didn't even know who the DP was for this film. And
Yeah.
camera and lighting is kind of one of my passions. But it doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter who. Like
Yeah.
he still gets the same look to the same effect. And Fincher is the same way. He had a consistent DP for the middle of his career, but since then he's kind of gone with whomever, and it's still like absolutely killer stuff.
I feel like I don't know how rare that is. There are filmmakers that you like, David Lynch, Wes Anderson. It doesn't matter so much who they're working with. You will know
Hmm.
that it is one of their films, but that is a really good point. I didn't realize Mann kind of cycled through cinematographers. I knew he hadn't worked with Donald Thorne, who did this one again, but it's very, I'm always impressed by a director where regardless of the DP they're working with, it's, it just goes to show you there are directors who really say, all right, DP, you're calling the shots. Like, I want
Hmm.
you to tell me where we're setting up and this and that. And not to say that he doesn't do that, but a lot of times there are directors who are like, I will focus on the actors and what's happening within the frame, and I want you, the cinematographer, to help focus on the
Sure.
frame itself. But
That's
with
very
this, it's
valid.
like it's a Mann film through and through, and all his films are that. And the DP is more like one of the many, many tools that he has in his bag to help him achieve that vision, which is
Yeah.
like, the way I'm saying it, it's like, well, yeah, no duh, that's what the cinematographer's job is. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes it feels like with a director you can tell it's a different cinematographer, but in this case it's like, with Mann's career, he has a consistent look throughout all his movies regardless of who he's working with.
And all the DPs, to be fair, are pretty set. Like he's worked with
Yeah.
Spinotti twice. He's worked with Beebe twice. He worked with Emmanuel Lubezki on Ali. It's like
Yeah.
these guys also like they're also world class artists of their own. But to that point, they are submitting themselves to his vision, and he's clearly making it clear, right? It's not
Yeah.
like I'm thinking a filmmaker I'm thinking of who does an excellent job, but doesn't have a real thumbprint in the same way. Ron Howard, who's also worked
Yeah.
with a ton of different DPs, but a lot of their tone and image, who I that's a conversation for another time, but I don't think Ron Howard gets enough credit for how versatile he is as a director over the course of his
Yeah,
career.
definitely.
But because people like Fincher and so on forth get a lot of attention, and they have their style where it's like, I think there's validity to doing something in whatever style the story requires, which
Yeah,
you could never
Sidney
pin it down.
Lumet was, I think, a lot like that too. Like, he really emphasized the idea of a director's style was BS. Like, he's like, your style is to serve the story you're telling.
Sure.
And Lumet was, again, made some of the great 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon, like some of the
Yeah.
greatest films of all time, and was very much in service of whatever story he was telling. I mean, he directed The Wiz, like the the musical, like the adaptation of that. Like, it's
Yep.
just, his career is also all over the place. I feel like he and Ron Howard are kind of a type, like they're that
It's true.
version of directing. There's
There's a
validity
workmanship there
across the
too.
board.
Yeah,
There's
there's a
you
workmanship.
exactly, workmanship, recognizing the story and putting the story first. However, it is always delightful when you get a Michael Mann or a Stanley Kubrick or like that, even Christopher Nolan. I will fully give him props for like
Sure.
specific distinctive vision that is wholly their own.
Yeah.
And very just it Thief is a movie like a lot of Michael Mann's best films that just makes you delight in cinema. Like, it's like, this is a guy who understands what the art form is capable of and is going all out. And it's really thrilling to see him, even from the get-go, having that understanding and playing around with it and having fun and seeing, like, not testing the limits, but really, like, it's like, it feels like this is a complete it is a intelligent cinematic vision. It is well told cinematically, and it falters in the actual script, and it's okay because cinematically it's still working. It holds
Agreed.
up the rest of the weaknesses.
Absolutely.
Some other just random things. I'm going to go through my notes. Something I loved was that the guy. So Frank goes to see this guy who's like the guy who builds the tools for him to do his job, and
Yep.
that guy calls him Sonny. Part of me wonders if that was intentional. If Michael Mann said, "You have to call him Sonny," because that's the character he is in The Godfather. So I had a moment where it was like, he's like, "Sonny, look here," and I was like, "Hey, Sonny." So just want to point that out. What else? Oh yeah, Willie Nelson. I thought this might have been my least favorite scene, minus the exchange with the doctor afterwards. But when he goes to see Willie Nelson and he's like, "Hey, you look good, man," and Willie Nelson's like, "Yeah," and then he just happens to die. It's like, you couldn't have picked a worse time. Really, Willie Nelson, Frank and his wife came to see you, and you're like, and oh no, you have to get out of the room. It just felt that tipped a little bit too much into like melodrama, like the doctor's trying to get him out of the room and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then my final note that I love, moment that I love, the old lady in Leo's house, who I don't know if she was a maid
when she
or
looks
his
up
wife.
from the TV.
Yeah, that was such a great, again, Mann finds these very human, he imbues his films with human moments, even though they're very stylized, and that felt like just such a small hilarious moment that could have been cut, but it is just so good. She just looks up at him and is like, "Oh boy, here we go again," and just goes back to watching her show. I love
And the shot so Polanski, like from Caan's point of view through like the kitchen arch, like you only see maybe from her shoulders up, but the whole rest of the room, it's very portraiture. And like, yes, she looks from the TV to Caan and then just back to the TV. Like whatever's about to happen is going to happen. Can't miss my stories.
So is there anything else you want to point out before we wrap things up that you think we haven't talked about?
So we harked on sound overall, and I just wanted to point out the one thing that I took a note on that I didn't mention. It kind of goes hand in hand. We talked about Tangerine Dream. We've talked a little bit about music, but music as a whole in his films. And so like the fact that also he hung around with that funk band when he's supposed to go on the date with the woman. He that didn't have to be a thing at all. Nothing really gained from it narratively, character wise, for any of that. It's just a deeper sense of the place and time that you're in, and he hangs around with that funk band as they play, and they're recorded extraordinarily well. They sound amazing. And he does the same thing in Collateral later, right, with the jazz musicians.
There's so well, man, and it's something that Nolan specifically referenced when he was making The Dark Knight. But Mann has a way of just, like you said, it's not about storytelling. It's about creating the world and world building. And and because these are the movies I've seen most recently. I saw Collateral once years ago, like when we were in college. So like 15 or so years ago about, Mann just does such a great job of creating these stunning world. These are not Hollywood sets. They are not like it feels, I mean, it's all on location, obviously, but he really, really takes the time to build up the world with just random asides like that, like going into that bar and listening to that band and having the band kind of serve as the soundtrack to the movie for a little bit. And you just feel like there's this living, breathing world beneath the surface of everything that's happening. And Mann is just so good at that.
And it's a complete change up too, because like we said, Tangerine, you got like heavy synth and like guitar, like wailing 80s guitar solos, and then all of a sudden you've got like this just really precise rhythmic, like the bass line, and that like funk band was just going absolutely bananas. Like it was awesome. Like, and it just, I don't know why that just stood out to me so strongly. Again, mixing in aurally, You know, we don't live in, it's not a purely visual medium. I'm going to harp on it because I don't think people I don't think people respect good sound design
Yeah.
enough. And so
Oh, totally.
I will always be the person who over talks about it, but it's just like, yeah. He's got the steel blues and the vibes at night. Well, part of the half of the vibes at night that give you that feeling are because he knows exactly what he's doing with audio at that moment. Not just because he's got a cool guy in an old car driving on wet pavement at nighttime. Like, you know, it's because he also understands exactly aurally what you need to be hearing to feel that. It, you know, if it was silent, it would not be the same. Or if it was a different soundtrack, it wouldn't be the same. But
Yeah.
he always knows what he's doing with his audio. And at that point in time too, he made the absolute right decision. And so going forward, like I'm curious. There wasn't there wasn't any of that in Tokyo Vice that I saw, but I'm hoping, you know, hoping for return. His last real big screen, I didn't see Black Hat, admittedly.
Yeah.
I saw Public Enemies, and it's admittedly since Collateral, it's not been great for me with him. However, you know, you just, even seeing his pilot from Tokyo Vice, it's not like he's gone off it or anything like that. I really still am holding hope that I can go see a Michael Mann film on the big screen where he could flex some of those muscles again here in the near future.
I would love that. And I feel like we're living in you know, obviously Christopher Nolan is one of the he's one of the main proteges we can think of one of the guys who really is following in those footsteps. But with directors like Spielberg and Scorsese still, like at his age, you know, Mann is 80 now, I think. And
God.
Scorsese is what, 80 something, Spielberg's late 70s.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you know,
tired. They're probably tired.
Right. Spielberg just released The Fabelmans, and Scorsese is what Killers of Flower Moon is going to come out, and he just did The Irishman, and it just feels like Mann is due for his, you know, his big magnum opus. He's already, I mean, not that he hasn't already done that, but it would be nice to see a late career triumph from him, because I think he's got at least one more good one. And
I mean,
I will see it. It's, you know, shot in IMAX. Like, I feel like go for it, go all out.
I mean, no, he absolutely could. No, he could absolutely. I fully believe that he could absolutely do it. No, there's no doubt in my mind. And all those masters, you know, it's just to the point where it's like, no matter what they come out with this point, I'm going to the theater to see it, so that way I can tell my kids and their kids, you know, you got to see these guys' films in theaters.
Yeah,
you know, you don't just see it after the fact in your home. Like, I want him to make one more. I hope he's got one more in him. But even if he doesn't, you know, he's left behind just an absolute compendium of just master classes in directing. It's been a long time since I've seen less of the Mohicans, but I know it's talked about. And one, for anybody interested in, including yourself, Shawn, that I don't think it's talked about enough, I think we mentioned it in the run up to this episode, but The Insider, I think is an excellent film. Al Pacino and Russell Crowe, 1999. He did it right after Heat, and obviously it's not going to get the same attention because it's between Heat and Ali. I think we did make that joke last time.
Yeah.
Tough place to
let's make it again.
Yeah, Heat and Ali. Yeah, like a rock and a hard place between Heat and Ali. But The Insider is an excellent film as well, and I think it's definitely one of his underrated, not often talked about pieces. I think people would really enjoy watching that film. So
yeah,
he's got range.
I want to go back and watch that. Obviously, I haven't seen it. I would love to rewatch Collateral, because I remember thinking it was fantastic, and especially now that, like, you know, having rewatched Heat and really enjoying it, and watching Thief, it would be great to just go and watch some more Michael Mann movies. And I want to go back and rewatch Last of the Mohicans, because I know people love that so much, and I'm curious to see if it.
I don't remember.
Change my mind.
I know I don't remember anything. Nothing about it, but it's got, you know,
Daniel Day-Lewis, and right. I mean, why not?
Well, that's all you got to say. It's got Daniel Day-Lewis. That's all you really need to know about it. But yeah, no, it's so yeah. In conclusion, for me, there, I mean, this was a great film and one of the stronger directorial debuts I've seen, and an all-time performance from James Caan.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a Caan fan, I mean, there's no way you haven't already seen it. But yeah, Thief was extremely strong. a great way to spend. It's about 2 hours run length and time.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed my time, and it makes me want to go. His next two I haven't seen, but I've heard about. The Keep and Manhunter. It just makes me want to see what is the progression that leads this dude, to Last of the Mohicans and then Heat.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. So, all right. Well, let's give it our final ratings. I think on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, how many bulletproof vests that sadly the Leo's henchmen were missing in the film? How many would you give Thief?
Can we do points as far as like blank point blank?
Yes, you can mix in
like 3.7 is probably what I
Yes.
would give it, like a 3.7.
How many D flawless 3-carat rings? What was the ring?
Yeah, dude, he whipped that. He whipped that line out so fast. I was like, I shook my head. I was like, oh, he said a thing. Yeah, exactly.
I had to look it up because I was like, what was that? All right, I'll give it. Yeah, I'll say 4, like solid 4.
Nice.
So, yeah, very, very good. Completely agree. It's a strong debut, one of the strongest I've seen. So it was a blast, and I'm glad we got to chat about it.
Yeah, same, Shawn. We spent too many hours talking about movies that nobody could ever listen to in college, and
so now we have to subject them to.
Well, I figure if you've got a platform, and I enjoy talking about movies, and I'm going to watch these movies by myself all alone, I might as well at least have somebody I love to be able to talk with it about it. Isn't that what life's really about?
I think so. Absolutely. Well, Shea, thank you again so much for taking the time to hang out with me and chat this movie. We're going into the social media plug section of the show. Is there anywhere where people should find you on the interweb?
I'm on Instagram as my name, but that's just about it. Nobody's encouraged to follow me there unless they want film stills on
Do you have a Letterboxd?
I do, but I don't hardly use it. Do you have a Letterboxd?
I have a Letterboxd, and I highly recommend using it. It is a blast. They do not sponsor this show, and they absolutely should, because
they are missing out.
So much credit for being wonderful. So my Letterboxd, if you are not yet following me, is ShawnDoorman05. My Twitter is @YayShawnDoorman. I don't love Twitter, but I'll respond if you say hi to me. And I want to see some Michael Mann, some rankings. Some Michael Mann rankings would be nice. Where does Thief rank in his filmography for the people out there listening?
That's a great question. Why didn't we do that on this episode?
We should have. I mean, it's still going. We could.
Could you whip it out real quick for the ones you've seen?
Well, I'll whip it out, but we can also talk about the filmography. This is a family-friendly show.
The first one's fine for me.
I think. I don't know. I mean, I need to see more. I feel like I can't do a fair ranking. This is probably the one I'd rank the lowest, but I haven't seen Public Enemies or the ones that are actually not good. But like,
no offense to you, Michael Mann.
Yeah, sorry, Johnny Depp, and all the many Public Enemy stands out there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's a good movie, but I obviously Heat is my number one, and Collateral was amazing. And
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So I've seen Thief, I've seen Heat, I've seen The Insider, I've seen Ali, I've seen Collateral, I've seen Miami Vice, and Public Enemies. I would probably go top to bottom for me favorites. I know that it's his masterpiece, but as far as rewatchability for me, and when it arrived in my life, I actually favor Collateral.
Oh, wow! All right,
I know.
I mean, it's a great movie.
I don't think I could debate anybody objectively that Heat is the better film, but for what it means to me and where I was on my sort of just movie journey at that point, like I just love Collateral. So I would say Collateral, Heat, The Insider, Thief, Ali, Miami Vice, Public Enemies.
All right. Wait, did you say Last of the Mohicans?
Oh, I didn't see. It's been so long since I've watched that. I really couldn't. I mean, I was probably 12 or 13 when I saw Last of the Mohicans on TNT.
I need to rewatch that. I need to rewatch Ali, and I need to rewatch Collateral. But all of these things will happen. We will not make you, listener, sit and.
I'm curious what other people think. I'm curious.
Yeah, I would love to hear some more ranking. So please tweet me @YayShawnDoorman. And again, you can rank movies and filmographies on Letterboxd. So get on that and let the world know. Let the Lord hear your voice. Thank you again, Shea, for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thank you everybody for listening. We will see you at the movies.